Here we are, live, live, live. Friday night. How you doing, my friend?
Very good, very good. Technical
Yeah.
difficulties set aside.
Excellent, excellent. So I put a couple videos on locals today. I should guess. I think we'll probably have a couple people with us live, but it'll be downloaded later. So I'll mention this throughout. We got a strike, and that's why we haven't been on YouTube for more than a week. So we're back. We've been doing everything on locals, and I'll tune people into it. We can talk about the videos I put over today on locals. Some of them will be able one of them can be accessed by members that come over. But here we are, some time off from YouTube. We got big time out. YouTube has, hey, thank you, Jay. I appreciate that. I really do. Um, so um, we yeah, I think apparently it started out, they didn't catch it right away. It was our conversation from 2 weeks ago. I was wearing the red shirt and getting all heated up. And they said it was science. I don't think we were talking science. And then they went back and took down some more. They gave us a couple of polls here and there, and they took down another one and a couple other copyright strikes. So I guess a flag went up and they're all over us. So I want to take it real easy for a little while on YouTube and not try to get a second strike right now. So you can just guess. For anybody that's hearing this for the first time, you're new to the channel, welcome here. The goal is I'm putting up four exclusive pieces of content every week over on locals. I'll still be doing a minimum of two videos a week here on YouTube. I hope everybody's doing great. We have been kind of just building things up over on locals. I'm loving it. I never even heard of a dang telegraph before. I guess I'm missing out on all this, but I'll shush up for a while. How you doing there, Mr. Aaron in the house?
I'm doing good.
Yeah.
The locals have been very good, yeah, especially to keep from what do you get the shakes after you come off of a drug after a while. So yeah, the YouTube crash was pretty devastating. So being able to go to locals and see some of the content was fantastic, and the articles going up were really good as well.
It's good.
Um, it's just a good compilation, and it's not too much, it's something you can kind of work your way through. And this last little series that you guys did, especially this one day, were very helpful. And that would let our conversation about I understood, but but not completely, And it's like there's all these little these things that are out there. It's like you got that piece of information and that piece of information over there, and how do you link them all together, and then what does it mean in the end?
Yeah.
So it led me to the question, and hence this talk tonight is, what the hell is millennialism? I like to use it to sound smart and hope the other person doesn't know what they're talking about. But so I've always had an understanding of it from a Protestant perspective, but how it ties in to this corruption of our theology as Catholics, this corruption of the church, and also how it ties directly to the Kabbalist understanding of like you talk about, the becoming as opposed to the being, an evolving God, like Teilhard de Chardin always talked about, versus a complete God, an infinite God versus an eternal God. So I wanted to pick your brain tonight, and because I know that I got the same questions that everybody else does, is to kind of go deeper into this idea of millennialism and why it's so important to understand from a Catholic perspective versus what Protestants see, and how it's weaved into the Jewish view of where they are right now and what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, well, it's big stuff. We can start any place. We could start out. I started the video today talking about Nick Fuentes,
Yes,
and Candace Owens. And here's where I really started it. Just things that are on everybody's mind, what's going on in the twirl of the world. And I'll argue that Kabbalism is behind this. There's a one conspiracy behind everything, and it helps to get our head around that. And wherever your background is in history, or where you're kind of how prepared you are for this, when you see the one conspiracy, everything becomes kind of clear. And very few people are speaking about it. Some of the greatest minds in every century have identified it, but the Kabbalist magic is so powerful, and the control over the media and the textbooks, etc., so powerful that when you hear the conspiracy, you shut down, you twitter, and so forth. So we go into that in video number 1, and it's called The Unnamed War, Part 1, and that's available for anybody that wants to go over there to Locals and check that out. I can rehash some of the ideas here or throughout the week. But millennialism, oh my gosh, if I don't want to go on and on and on, but I can start like this. It is the core of the thought virus that's been around for 2,000 years. It's the central core. It's been there since the first century. And it's this idea that somehow what Christ did on the cross was not finished, that he has to come for a literal 1,000 years, and then the work will be done. And it was really always somehow present in Gnostic thought for the first 2 centuries. It always led to political derailment, social derailment. And Augustine, through the use of someone like Origen, would kind of rethink that and say that the millennial kingdom is a spiritual idea. The church is the millennial kingdom. And really, that's the foundation. It's really locks in the mystical body of Christ, the church. It's ecclesiology, it's theology, and it's eschatology. And it really stabilized world relations and allowed the church to grow with this concept. It's the core of Catholicism, that the church is the millennial age. We're in, as Augustine would say, a time of waiting. And then he defines these ideas: city of God, city of man. So this idea is going to be introduced through a conspiracy of the synagogue in the Protestant Reformation, and they're going to immanentize it. They're going to say, no, it's not out here. We need to participate and make this happen and prepare the world. And they have a conspiracy. It really begins with Luther and Calvin, but it goes into England, and these ideas start surfacing. They get embedded into the very core of the Anglo-American Empire and the fabric of the whole kind of idea of becoming versus being, the church's being. And what I think I'm talking too much. I'm going to kind of pull back a little bit. But what hooks all of these ideas together is the kingship of Christ. In the Catholic social order, Father Fahey, all his books come back to this. It's the vertical. So if we round civilization around the concept of the kingship of Christ, all power and authority comes from him. All our economics, our social lives go back up to him. And it was the most beautiful arrangement possible. And that's what gets severed. Reality, again, is historical, hierarchical, and sacramental. It gets severed with Luther because that reality gets kind of put into one sense of simulacrum. It's decoupled from its fullness of its reality. And then it gets further driven into a simulacrum by Calvin. And once you get something like sola scriptura and sola fide, when you can interpret the Bible anyway, you can kind of come up with any wacky idea. And so we're living in the tail end of all this craziness. But on top of all that, if I'm not talking too much and too fast, what also comes with that was the synagogue, its power, its new capitalist empire over there in Holland is feeding the information to these kind of these people on the kind of periphery of the Anglo religious culture. We know them sometimes as the diggers or the levelers, these kind of radicalized English people, and they're kind of having an exchange. And basically what comes together, I'm saying way too much too fast, but there's an exchange of power. We will use England and your seafaring power as the new empire. In exchange, what's going to take place is we're going to give you a new hermeneutics to understand the millennial kingdom, and in a sense, you're going to have a Judaized faith, and that's the very core. It's hundreds of years before Schofield and Darby and all of those things. It's planted into the very seed of the Anglo-American Empire, into the very seed of classical liberalism, and And so it's in the air that we breathe when we say things like, our notion of freedom and capitalism. Here's the last thing I'll say. What had to be fundamentally changed is the idea of the city of man and the city of God, and it got perverted with this notion within Protestantism. It was relocated as the empire was being created through this new hermeneutics. What gets created is that gets shifted, and again, all these shifting always happens during a punctuated time of crisis. A killing of the king is usually going on. It's going on around the time of Cromwell and so forth. And I can get to what's going on today with a variation of the killing of the king. But what is going to be introduced instead of the city of man and the city of God, with the millennial age up here, it's going to be the true church, the Protestant church, the wackier the better, and the Catholic Church now becomes the enemy. The good guys are considered the good guys are going to be considered the Jews. So who was always considered the enmity of the church in the millennial age, who was always behind nearly all of the Gnostic perversions throughout the age, attempting to derail the social order, the Catholic social order, they're now going to be considered the good guys, because when the millennial reign comes down to earth, after that, this is just like it happened in the 1st and 2nd century. We have revolution after revolution. The Jewish revolutionary spirit has been unleashed through the Protestant movement. And of course, with the advent of Calvin, you get the usury is dissolved, which always kind of held the synagogue at bay. And they are intruding. They're let back into England. Within very short order, they create the Bank of England. And the rest is almost history. Now, I have a document that I released today about describing this one conspiracy, and then I'm going to shut up for a second. And the beautiful part of this, everybody should know this conspiracy. It's a shame that I feel like I'm the only one doing this. I know there's kind of others, but I can't even tell you who they are because a lot of things start to click in. But here's the names. I think a lot of people are familiar with Henry Ford, a great industrialist, great American, very patriotic. Father Fahey, who the whole conclusion of my book takes 5 of his books together and describes the one conspiracy. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the great Russian writer, he would talk about this, all describing the same one. Douglas Reed, a great American journalist. In addition to those 5 names, there's 5, I would call them great Jewish thinkers and very accomplished men that also contribute to this idea of one conspiracy. And I'll give you a few of them. Almost all of these names are mid-century, mid-20th century. Myron Fagan, Benjamin Friedman, Elmer Berger, Henry Klein, and Alfred Lilienthal. And almost all of them, all 10 of them subscribe to the idea that there is a Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, something nobody can talk about. I never talk about it. It all begins in 1489 with the conspiracy of Constantinople, and I thread it throughout history in the 2 videos, and that's where we're at. But once you realize this, you're going to realize all the wars and rumors of wars, all the revolutions, they do have one lock unlocks all the locks. The criticism you get from any influencers that don't want to touch this is that you're going to get this kind of highbrow thing like, that's lowbrow, I'm sophisticated, I'm virtuous. And I'm saying since the beginning of the time, all the saints and the great thinkers put their reputation on the line to expose this in order to protect their people and to protect the mystical body of Christ. So to assume that you're too highbrow, I'm just tired of it after hearing about this for years and years and years. So I put it out there. I don't know if I'll do it again on YouTube this week. We'll see. I'm just really touchy about the whole YouTube thing. So that's a little bit about millennialism. But when one of the titles of our videos, more desired than our own salvation, and that was a phrase that came out of one of the Calvinists in this area that they got when this millennial mind virus got into them. The interest of whatever getting the Jews into Israel, protecting them at any cost, that mind virus, literally today, Republicans and Democrats, whoever's signing on to the neocon agenda in whatever capacity, They're literally willing to bankrupt their children's future, open the borders to whatever's going to come our way and whatever infiltration is going to come into our country, our churches, our families, our own personal security. Everything is chucked away. And it just the fear of questioning them, and you're giving them everything as they're pathologically destroying themselves and everything around them, bombing this neighbor, Lebanon this week and this week. And part of the big plan is, I believe, that this is all kind of planned. They want to attack themselves and bring about this biblical age and really, in a sense, what we call the restrainer. They want to bring in all the forces. They really want to bring down the house. So that's probably talking, again, way too much and way too fast. I'm going to slow down and see if there's any bits and pieces that you want to ask about, any events you want to talk about, anything that's on your mind, Aaron, just let me know.
Well, I was thinking through that, this idea that when you realize that the millennial kingdom is now, that when you talked about the video, is that what Christ on the cross, when he said it's finished, and that entered us into the millennial kingdom, the time of the church, the time of the sacraments, the new priesthood, the sacrifice of the mass. All this was complete at that moment, and now we're living in it. And so that 1,000-year reign of Christ, you were talking about Origen. I remember him reading about his writings on this, and I guess and Saint Augustine, that this 1,000 years, that means fullness, that means complete.
Yes,
and it's total. So it's
yes.
not 1,782 years or 2,456 years. It's not that. It's the complete reign of Christ, that everything in salvation history has been completed now through Christ, and we as the children of God, as the adopted sons of God, through our baptism, are now grafted into his church, to his people. And as we live out our lives and we work out our salvation in fear and trembling, we're living in that millennial kingdom. When you get rid of that idea, and you think that the millennial kingdom is this thing that's going to happen in the future, and that it's predicated on the Jews returning to the homeland, and 144,000 of them, or whatever you came up with to explain that. When I was a Protestant, I was always confused about this 1,000-year reign. It's like, okay, so what's that going to look like? We're going to hang out for, it's going to be year one whenever he comes back. And then 1,000 years is going to go along, and he's just going to be hanging out somewhere, and we're all going to be eating fruits off trees and chilling out and having a great time. That's just weird. Doesn't make sense. So when you understand that the Catholic Church, that what was handed down to us is that we are living in the millennial kingdom, and then you get rid of that whole idea and you say, no, we've got to create it. That engenders an entire new concept of what society is for, what rules, what laws, everything that you live by, what's your faith, how you see everything. It's that little current that's been going underneath the whole Protestant movement for 500 years. It was just, I was like, oh, that was an aha moment for me. So now you can see why there's such an emphasis on Israel now that they have this homeland restored, and whatever that whole concept actually means versus what it really is in relationship to Scripture. Whole other conversation, right? That you've had a few times on here. But this, now you can't, if you're a Christian, if you're Christian West, if you can't support Hamas, or not Hamas, but you can't support the Palestinians, because if you're supporting the Palestinians, you're against the people of God. The whole narrative is lost, and you can't actually enter into a conversation with somebody on Zionism because they're so emotionally tied to this millennial view of the future that isn't what God created. It wasn't what he set in place. So there's so many mind viruses that are going on in people's heads, that how do you talk past that and be able to get someone to understand this without going through an entire 100-point fact sheet to get them to realize it? It's like, how, but the understanding of millennialism, that that clicks with me. That's something that I can say. If you think the millennial kingdom is coming, that we're going to be coming into that,
Exactly.
then you have the wrong understanding of what Christianity is and what Christ did on the cross. You're saying that it wasn't complete. You have to see it as now, as in the church.
Yeah. I mean, so many things there. You just can't. Something so precious about Catholic ecclesiology, theology, and eschatology is especially Augustine and St. Thomas, the two bookends, really hold society together, affect everything of the Catholic social order. But again, the Catholic social order and the kingship of Christ takes everything back to the source of all authority and power, and that is brought back to his people and imbibes everything. And that was Christendom. And that gets unhooked. That totality of reality gets unhooked with the Protestant Reformation. But initially it was amillennial. Initially Calvin and Luther still held that idea, but they thought that they were going to be the true church with that. It only took a few generations before, the sort of the wackies got in. And when you unhook that, that's why I talk about immanence. The eschaton is the finished work set across. It's Christ's finished work on the cross, and it's our beatific vision. It represents the new heaven and the new earth. When you take that down to earth, you get charged, and it gives you a sense of charisma, and you feel like you're living in the moment, and you want to participate in revolutions. And that's what's going to be going on right now. And so one of our fears, when our celebrities that are saying a lot of truth right now, like Christ is King, I mean, it's electrifying. I'd never listened to the guy before, but I listened to Nick Fuentes on top of the balcony over there in Detroit. And I was nodding my head. I thought I didn't know really much about him. I knew he supported Kanye and he's on Alex Jones. So I thought, whatever. I wasn't going to give him much time. And he even said something like Christ is King over our hearts. But he's kind of getting people. But he had a kind of a solid, I voted for Trump in 2016. But he's saying no more. Let's cut it off. Whereas Candace, she's giving you a little breadcrumbs of conspiracy. She's saying Christ is King. She's very, like I say, very cuddly. And, and it doesn't matter if someone's in on it or not. That's not the idea. Because even if you're sincere, the synagogue can pull that back in. So my fear of what's going to be coming up in the next several months is Christ is King, which we need to own in our hearts, in our communities, in our lives. It has to be central to how we spread the gospel message. That is going to be stripped if we don't stand on guard, and that's going to be taken into the political realm. So if we keep Christ in heart in the bosom of the church, it cannot be created into a mind virus or an egregore. It's only Catholicism cannot be an egregore. There are no contradictions. Once you pull it out of there, then it can be used. East versus left, right versus left, east versus west, right versus left. It can be used. And so they work you up. You get mad at the east or get mad at the left. The right's going to come in with an answer, and then they screw everything up. And that's the course of history, always moving you to one conclusion with the millennial kingdom. And it was said beautifully by Captain Ramsey, but even more beautifully by Dr. Dennis Fahey. They're preparing all of the world for this millennial kingdom, the age of the Antichrist. And they're the power behind all the revolutions. They're the power behind all the economic monopolies. They have penetrated into all of the cabinets of the world. And this is all, I know you hear it, but people don't truly believe it. It's truly all theater. Now, if you go back a couple hundred years, they couldn't have controlled the whole world, but this simulacrum through the advent of modern media, in conjunction with control of the cabinets of the world, we saw it over the last 4 years, everybody in lockstep, marching to this absurdity that made no following a science that made no scientific sense, because all the techniques were there, manufacturing fear, manufacturing uncertainty and so forth to get you into this mind virus. So yeah, millennialism is what controls. I mean, it's most acute in America, where we see all these fake culture wars going on. But at the end of the day, both sides are going to sell our country out. They're going to sell Australia out. They're going to sell Ireland out. They're going to sell the UK out. They're going to sell France out. They're going to sell Germany out. every country is positioned to sell their people out for this. And I say, like Christ said, they're in the spirit of Cain. The father was a liar from the beginning and a murderer from the beginning. So we see it with the propaganda, the lies, the death. And we need to be salt and light. That sounds like a lame Protestant kind of crazy expression. But we do. We have to be salt and light to the, and we have to preserve the mystical body as it's always been known historically in its hierarchical form and with our participation in the sacraments. Christ's body coming to us, our bodies preparing ourselves for Christ. So as crazy as it gets, and it seems like they control everything, you have to keep your mind, your body, your soul preserved for pure incorporation into the mystical body of Christ. Okay, I'm talking too much, Aaron. Say something else. Comments about anything. So I'm just saying what Candace is saying and what Nick are saying is the most important thing, given that right now Western Europe is on the precipice of demolition. America is on the precipice of demolition, and the traditional Latin, these are all happening all at the same time. The traditional Latin Mass. I mean, of all the churches they haven't bombed in the Ukraine and whatnot, that's always been the target of their revolutions. In First and Second War, they just love bombing churches. But yeah, that's the thread throughout all revolutions. It's what's going on today, and that is the goal. And they want to take that concept of mystical body of Christ and use it for them. So in one sense, they want it to be hate speech, but they're going to say it's not hate speech, you mean this by it. And at that point, if the Catholic apologists or the influencer are going, yeah, let's use it that way, that's where we have to be careful and be able to stand up and say, no, that's not what that's not what Christ is King means. It doesn't mean participating in this millennial project of your carnal, earthly Jerusalem project. Okay, I'm talking too much.
Well, so
but you described it very well, Aaron. You rehashed it very well.
Well, I think one of the other things you talked about in the other video on locals was, this also helps us to start looking for those lines for people to cross. So we're going to start looking for Candace Owens to say all of these great and wonderful things, and then what we're waiting for is to say, yeah, but you got the lesser of two evils. Which one are you going to pick? So when she comes out and says, but we got to support Trump, that's when you're going to know it's like, okay, whether you're in on it or not, you don't get it yet. Whereas Nick Fuentes is saying, hey, we start our own party. It's kind of interesting because we talked about it in our group. It's like, yeah, we should start a political party locally called Christ the King. And then what would that look like? So I think that's going to be a big trigger to start looking out for. So when you talk about those two key figures, you've trashed Bannon properly, talking about all of this stuff that we need to be worried about with tradition, and then goes over here on the side and goes, we need to support Trump, who is a Zionist. And then the other one that's interesting in the news, everyone's talking about it. Taylor Marshall did like a 17-hour video live talking about the Vigano's recall to the Vatican for his excommunication. But he's another great example. It's like, okay, he's saying all the right red meat stuff that you would want to hear about the Latin Mass, about bringing back patriotism and nationalism and all these great things. But he's not talking about the enmity. He's not talking about these power forces behind it. I did a Google search. Maybe Google suppressed it. I'll have to go on another one of the search engines and see if I can find something else. But the point being, if he said anything about the true conspiracy that's going on behind the scene and the powers that be, it's not clear to anyone who knows Vigano or follows his work that there is a problem with even Zionism. Something as simple as that to call out about how it's disrupted our foreign policy. So, in my mind, looking at him, I could see where he would be an inside player, because he's taken everybody's focus and saying it's all about the TLM. It's not about the TLM. It's about the TLM, but it's not about the TLM. It's about returning to the traditions of the faith, because there's so much ambiguity in it right now after Vatican II. We're not trying to hold on to this precious liturgy, which we are, but it's like that part is just overplayed, and it's like, you guys just need to get over it and get with the program. It's like, no, what we're trying to get back is we're trying to get back the certainty of our faith, the truths that have been with us for 2 millennium, if I can use the word again.
Yeah.
So I can see where he would be a guy that would you could take him off and turn him into this whack job in the media of this rebel, and where you get one side that gets behind him, and it's like I said, it's all focused on the mass and not on the traditions of the church, which is getting lost in today's discussion. With the magisterium, the ever powerful magisterium, um, being silent.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Aaron. I want to jump in. I want to say hi, Sue. I want to say with Richard, I'll leave a link below to get you over to locals, because I don't know if you just type. Have you tried it before, Aaron? If you just type in like deep state locals, I think it's hard. I know I'm just totally shadow banned on YouTube. It's hard to find me. That's why if you ever want to share this with
a friend, Google it, and you go to there. You have to sign up.
You will find it. Okay, and I'll try to leave a link in here.
Yeah, I'll actually try to do that while
before I even try Vigano, what I would like to say is, yeah, the Bannon thing, the idea of equating Bannon with any priests that were arrested during the World War II era is not this bloodthirsty warmonger, Steve Bannon, is problematic. And I'll just give you another thing today. I saw a headline, I got it up here. Now, Benny Shapiro has also been arrested by those leftist cops. They're coming to get us all. So you have to protect Steve, protect Benny, what do you call him? Have you ever heard of this guy? I hate being so much part of this simulacrum, because I have jumped into it to kind of do these videos. I think his name's, I call him Tim Toole, but that was back in the day. We used to call people
Tim Pool, yeah.
Yeah, with the toboggan hat on.
Yeah.
So Shapiro made the video, and somehow his name popped up, and he goes, "No, we got to protect the evangelicals. They're not going to go for that, And so we have to support Elon Musk." And anyway, these. Oh, so yeah, so I had to listen for a couple minutes to Benny's voice when he's pretending like the cops are going after them, and then he's in an interview, and some guy asks him about the alt-right. He goes, "They're garbage. They're garbage. They're in some kind of blood and soil. They're living in the past." So I guess they're really trying to slice people away from the Christ is King crowd. And I wish, and I hope that Candace is sincere, and that Benny's that Nick is sincere. But once Candace, she'll be the first to go. I can already see it. I'm going to mute your keyboard there. Once she's already telling people, she was asked, like, if Adelson is going to support Trump. Well, Adelson's a decisive figure. That means the powers that be have decided. He did give the money, and he's got the strings attached. Okay. So Candace Owens is going, if that's the case, it's not a if, he did. So, and she's already basically said, this is the only choice we have. And it's like, if people get so attached to her that, okay, well, Candace said this is the only choice we have. I'll pull this down for a second for everybody. I did put it on locals, but let me put this on. This dropped yesterday. I don't know if people are informed about this kind of stuff. I hope I can do this without too much weirdness going on. But this is, I think, a sign of things to come. I'm back here. Did I get it on here? Is it on here? No. Okay, wait. I have to come over here probably. Here we go. Did it not come? Did it not? Why is it not coming up here? Maybe I have to go over to it. So give me.
No, you can see it.
Can you see it right now?
Yep.
Okay. So this comes from Israel 365 News, the key to Trump's victory in 2024, the Noahide laws. So kind of come back. Oh, there we go. You can see it. Let me bring myself back on. myself back on here. Yeah, that is very telling. That is very telling. I came to this side of the screen. I don't know if I might do a video this week talking about the Noahide laws. In my first book, Seeing Through the Singularity, I juxtaposed the Christian singularity from the beginning to its telos, its ending, which is the incorporation into the mystical body of Christ and the conclusion of all things, the redemption of the whole world, humanity, and the new heaven and the new earth, juxtaposed to the Kabbalistic vision or the Hermetic Kabbalistic tradition, and that technological singularity and the Noahide laws come with the advent of the Mashiach preparation for the millennial age. So when you're seeing it right out there, they're saying this. Sheldon Adelson has given him the money. Whoever he supports, and they did this publicly. This could have been under the table. So anybody that's going to sign on to this knows it. And if you ever watch Days of Noah, I think he's on top of this. Trump, it's going to be introduced from the right. Trump will introduce the digital congruence. That congruence is going to happen from the right in Europe and Argentina, South America, and here. So the right's going to introduce that congruence, which is the key kind of critical component of the globalist scheme. He's going to also introduce, again, Trump. It's right there. The key. They're basically saying the key this time around is Noahide laws. So when you're signing on to Trump, that's what you're going to be signing on to. And now I could change my tune. I rarely ever have. I don't do this much predicting. I see just broad trends, and that's what you're signing on to. So when Candace is saying, hey, you don't want to sign on to Sleepy Joe, I know she's warm and cuddly, but just beware. And I don't think she doesn't seem to kind of recognize Nick over there. But Nick, during his little rah-rah session was going, we love Candace. So just look out for them and be careful. The times we're changing. Yeah, we want to defend our borders, but the borders are unprotected around the whole Western world. Whether or not Trump could actually do something about that in the short term, maybe he could. I doubt it. But the key thing is here. They need someone from the right, just like they did to advance warp speed. They're going to need it for this digital human convergence, which is just on the horizon here. But the key point here is the election 2025. They're going to have an executive transition, they're calling it. This is here in the States, but you'll have a similar kind of thing. Wherever your referendums or whatever elections you're having abroad, you're going to have something very similar. So we're gearing up for this transition, and it's the swing to the right. So now they can interject from their side of the dialectic into it. So what you're going to do with this new kind of, it's going to be a very controlled nationalist movement. It might have little elements of ecumenical Christianity, modernism within it. And within that, they're going to try to pull in the Christ is King crowd. And somebody mentioned up here, Christ is King of Kings. And so that's what I see, that we have to be very. So when I say, hey, watch out for Trump, and people say, what do you do? I mean, at this moment, this guy is like attaching yourself to dynamite right now. This is a no-brainer that you don't want to attach yourself to this guy. So that's a lot of what I went through today in the first video. But a lot of this, when you see that document from 1492, that's what's going on, and that's what's been completed in the world that we live in, as we're hearing about wars and rumors of war on the world stage. They're cocking everything and getting it loaded for some crazy times up ahead. What else you thinking over there, Aaron? Do you want to take? Does anybody in the chat? Danny, we got Jackie, Evangela, which literally, yeah.
A lot of questions on locals. Richard was asking about whether or not it was available over in Thailand. I think, just quick about that. You should be able to Google locals or in whatever search engine you have, and that should come up. If that's not coming up, put a shout out in the comments.
Yeah, and I'll say this: everybody knows David, our friend from France. He's going to come by in July and to give us an update, because things are really crazy in France right now. All of Europe, Germany, everything's really crazy over there. He's going to give us an update. His shows have been some of the most popular on the channel. And he told me he can't go to locals because it's connected to Rumble. And in Rumble, this is censored. So he has no access over there. So it wouldn't be surprising to me.
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't know the name. It's the green A. Somebody said I learned so much from you. Thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I said to my crowd in locals today, it's you guys in locals that are giving me a reason to get up every day and really find out new stuff, put myself out there. But, you know, I was a little too crazy on YouTube, got a little too riled up, and I have to reel back. I mean, I'm going to post stuff on YouTube, but it's going to be like, do you like lemonade? Yes, I like lemonade. Thank you very much. So I have to kind of chill it,
Missy has a good question. Hey,
my heels. What's the question?
Do you see Missy's question?
Hey, Missy, do you see a pause in their plan this time around? Maybe enough pushback that kicks their plans? Maybe. One thing you have to bear in mind, first of all, I think, again, I said this on locals, I think Candace Owen, Michael Matt are very important. They're very influential right now. And that's why I'm just saying, I'm just critiquing them around the edges. They're very important players. But when you get into this hope thing that they've screwed everything up, and if you don't see the dialectics and how they operate, you see a flat, you know, everybody's an autonomous actor, you're going to miss it. They're the Freemasonic power behind the East and the West. Nobody has any power in the Muslim world unless they're in on it. So at that level, they are in on it. And they're waiting to kind of get it cocked and loaded. But one thing I would say, Missy, is that, you know, when I was coming up, learning all this stuff years before I even started Dr. Deep State, it was always called Agenda 2020. So they just, you know, when it was like 2018, 2019, it's like, I don't see any smart cities, you know, these stack and pack cities, and we're going to move you into. But then when 2020 came around and you saw the pandemic, and then suddenly they rebranded it for 2030. So yeah, they can be way off with their timing. And I think they like to oversell a lot of things. So yeah, it's hard. We are not made for a one world order. I say our consciousness, we're beings like this. We're split beings, humans. And we have an economic side that we're willing to buy and sell with people from throughout the world, even people we never met, you know, especially if it comes in at the lowest possible price. We're willing to come to a classroom and be around different kinds of people and share an economic activity. But the other side of us, the psychic part of us, wants everything small and immediate. And that's why when you look over the top of a city, everybody goes back at night when they leave their job, leave their schools, and they go back to people that they know they're comfortable around. People don't like to admit it, but that's how it is around the whole world, birds of a feather. So the psychic part of us, we don't want it. When we sing, a song is going to resonate, whether it's a rap song or a country song. It's going to be, I hang out with my homeboys and this is how we roll. It's stuff that's close, tight, family, familiar in some sense. We don't get up in the morning and sing songs like, unless you're John Lennon or something, imagine there's no heaven, imagine there's no hell. Most of us don't get up and say, you know, I'm a member of the world community. You know, it just doesn't resonate with our human part. We're willing economic. So these two parts of us are at tension, our psychic part and our economic being. And so that's what the controllers have ever tried to push us into, some kind of world where we really, they can overcome this tension inside of us. I think that's part of why the Tower of Babel fell, but actually God intervened, and God said the most amazing thing. If they can do that, they can do anything, because they would have really had to have killed our psychic part of us to make us we have to become almost zombie-like to really embrace like the whole world, because it's not how we're really wired. So that's what they're trying to overcome. But can they fall back? And yeah, I mean, they did it. They had to kick it back 10 years before. And I can kind of see, I think all of the elements weren't there. I'm going to say one more thing that's kind of interesting. 10 years ago, Kissinger, because they always kind of say these kind of things. Kissinger said this was bizarre to say in 2015. He said in 10 years, I mean, he might have said 2014. In 10 years, Israel's not going to be there. And most people were thinking he's going to talking about the demographics of Palestine. But I think he was talking about more or less this Armageddon, Samson option kind of thing, that Israel was from the get-go in the long term created to be destroyed because it's symbolically going to be there to bring in the new world order. And that's how they work, through creative destruction. So they, and part of their weird Kabbalistic thing, when they kind of take the place of the demiurge or become their own gods, they occasionally have to destroy themselves in order to rebuild. So I think that that's the only way. When you watch people like Colonel McGregor and Scott Ritter, and they're doing on the ground, well, Netanyahu made a bad move here and Putin did this. Once you back off and just kind of see, no, they really are just setting this up theatrically to play out something that looks like a script from Armageddon, so that all the brainwashed Zio-Christians, especially that's who they want to dupe, and especially that's who the devil wants to dupe, is people that call themselves Christian but are willing to throw away their own salvation because they've been so consumed by this mind virus. But yeah, I mean, in short, I think I think sometimes they'll get things ready and they just can't get it. It's a lot of parts to get in place, but to kind of think they always have backup plans and everything like that. So what, I mean, there's some scary stuff for them. What?
Days of Noah has talked about this, and that one of the things he's noticed and spoke about is that, this thing that they're trying to do with AI. I think there's a whole lot of their planning that has been based on expectations, like you said, things technologically or demographically haven't moved as fast as they've needed them to. So I think as far as if there's going to be a delay, I don't think it's through any effort on an awakening's part. I think I think if there's a delay, it
is bananas, Dana.
A lot more to do with, it has a lot more to do with the technology not getting to where they need it to be and spread as far as they need it to be. So I think it's more of a logistical question with regards to a delay. But with that said, I think a big part of this is that there is this awakening, and in the end, there are more of us than there are them by a vast majority. How that looks. One of the things I've been going into, kind of a side note, is taking a deeper dive into the Spanish Civil War, because I've heard a number of military thinkers refer to what the Spanish War looks like, the Spanish Civil War looked like in the 30s, to similar to what we would see in America. But I think one of the dynamics of today's modern warfare and what we're dealing with is the technological advances in warfare are so extreme within even the last 10 years, especially as a result of the global war on terror, as it were, and the stuff that we've been able to develop and the resources we've been able to put towards that. I mean, you literally cannot hide anywhere. There's nowhere to go. So when the federal government decides, or the powers that be decide, that they're going to stop something from happening, they're going to stop you. You cannot have enough bullets to defend yourself against that force. So in my mind, I'm just kind of wondering, what will be the limiting factor that keeps them from coming into an area. Because I think in the end, once they take off the sheep's clothing and they reveal themselves, I don't think there's nothing that's going to stop them from doing what they did in Maui or in downtown Manhattan on a mass scale.
Yeah. And I think, oh gosh, I'm on YouTube. I almost got used to talking over on locals. What they did, part of what they did over the last 4 years was, I think there is an element to tracking and tracing and the Bluetooth kind of thing. So yeah, you don't, even if you leave your phone behind, that you probably can be tracked and traced, and you can probably do that anyway. But yeah, that's definitely going on. The more, I don't know, when you just say Christ is king, when you can say that and just say that, I'm in the spirit, I'm not going to be distracted. That's one thing that's just got to piss them off. And I think there's nothing that can piss them off and say that your personal autonomy is your own, saying Christ is the king. And the fact that they're triggered by that is empowering. So every time we're going to kind of give some of that up. Now, remember, they talked about the externalization of the hierarchy over 100 years ago. So sort of what's been exposed, it's being exposed so it can be bent back into the project. So when things are, and I've said this on Locals, like in Locals, I put up like Carlson talking to Glenn Greenwald, or he's talking to Finkelstein. The problem is, and they're putting stuff out in the mainstream like I've never seen before. And I hate to be a purist about this, but until somebody can recognize the one conspiracy, nothing is going to completely make sense. And understanding the pureness of the enemies of Christ help us to return to the pureness and the fullness of what I call the bosom of the church, or the classical Catholic social order. And even though it doesn't exist, when Christ is king over our minds and we know truly all authority and all power in the universe comes from Christ, you're most likely to kind of really take the simulacrum that just mimetically sucks you into it and attaches you to this egregore project. And what the conclusion of Saints through the Singularity, the last chapter is called the egregore of earthly Jerusalem. So when you have Augustine, city of man and the city of God, when you've sold yourself out so far over there that you just kind of can't even see that you're participating in the building of the Antichrist. Now, some of us can just totally get these nutty evangelicals, or the rapture, that really think that they that they treat these people like gods or something, like they're really chosen or something like that. I mean, and they're always carrying a Bible around you. Do you read the damn thing? I mean, it's like, do you read it? It's not that tricky. It's just not that tricky. I could never, I wasn't raised in this. I was raised Lutheran. I didn't know it was called amillennialism, but I just never heard about this kookiness until, frankly, my Jewish students would start talking about how they would just laugh at how stupid Christians were. And one of the phrases when I was going through Captain Ramsey's thing, just like, the protocols, gosh, I have to be careful what I'm saying here. Laugh about the stupid goyim believing in these things like liberty, fraternity, equality. It's just the same thing, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they say, like, you'd have to give up so much of your brain to actually believe in equality. It's a great guideline, but I mean, it's embedded in American Constitution. Liberty and equality are antithetical to each other. It's a built-in mind virus. Liberty means the freedom. It's going to be associated with a hierarchy. Equality isn't. It negates that. And that's where you have the Zohar trick. Anti-reality is going to pull from reality to make an artificial reality. I'm getting too abstract here. But yeah, we have a mind virus built right into our Christian creed, our national creed. But, already the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution are at odds with each other, but I don't want to go there right now. I'd rather talk about celebrities. Here's a good one with Steve Bannon. So did I mention this? Yes, I did. So now, oh yes, Ben Shapiro the lefties are going after him. I got to tone it down. I don't want to get kicked out of YouTube. I really don't. I'd rather just kind of save this stuff. Anybody that's kind of new. So we had a strike. We've been off for a week. Stuff's over there at Locals. I got a video. If you become a member, it's free. One of the videos talking about the one conspiracy and the amazing story of Captain Ramsey. What an amazing person.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought him up because I looked his book up. That's going to be the next purchase. That's as you were going through that, it's like, geez, because I have the Ease of Zion, have that on the shelf. But it's amazing. Speaking to those two things, when you bring up any of those types of documents, I remember when you brought him up, I'd heard about that, like the letters from Constantinople. Those two documents, the elders and the one from Constantinople, way back when I was hearing about all of this stuff and dismissing it, especially with regards to how they were talking about an inside job with a particular date. I was like, this is nonsense. And when you go and you Google it, they talk about how it's all been discredited and it's all been shown to be a forgery. And then when you have to ask the questions like, well, who proved that it was a forgery? How do we know it's a forgery? How do we know it's not real when all of these noted people have been quoting it for quite a long time? And it's so when you bring it
yeah.
out,
I mean, I gave 10 names and they all quoted it and took it seriously.
right.
So it's a copy of a copy. And I can go into the origins of it, but it was made between probably the second decade after the French Revolution.
We can tie it
But
also
it's
into
got a 100% batting average. To show me anything that's got a 100% batting average in the world.
right. I mean, the
So that
Ultimate
alone.
Vita was that was brought in to the Vatican, and I forget somebody will remember it, which pope it was, published it, and at his own expense, and just handed it all around and said, hey, this is the threat that we're looking at in our country. And so the Ultimate Vita has not been proven to be a forgery, and it's all along the same lines. They're all saying the same exact things. So it's an open secret.
Yeah. And you can't be an academic and sign on to it. And I'm going to interview an academic from England this week. He's out with a new book. He's not saying anything I haven't, and he doesn't really include the metaphysical level, but hopefully it's a good conversation. He really knows the science very well. So he's got a new book coming out with a connection, the Nazi connection. So he's saying what wasn't completed by the Nazis in World War II. It's the same. He's not going to use the word typology. It's being played out, but he's an academic of note over there, and I'm going to interview him on a previous book and the one he's got coming out this week. So that should be out Wednesday night. I'll probably have half of it here on YouTube, and the other kind of dicey part I'm going to put over on Locals. So that's coming up this week. Yeah, and I wanted to make an appearance here with Aaron tonight and just let people know I'm back, and we're going to be, hopefully, I don't want to get 2 strikes because that's really serious. So I do want to just be kind of careful, and sometimes I lose track when I'm talking over his and say too much. So,
hey, real quick, one of the things we talked about, we listed it up in the thread on the title. So we were talking earlier today, and something that I think personally, like the 3 big lies. I like to categorize things, and I think the 3 big lies in succession that have opened the door to all of these other false realities. And I think it started as I've looked back over it. Again, not an exhaustive study, and you guys can weigh in on this. I think the 3 big lies in succession. It's been heliocentrism, it's been the Renaissance, and then it's been evolution. So if you look at those 3 things and how they built on each other, and then in the end created this subjective reality. With heliocentrism, it's clear in Scripture that the earth says literally it's fixed and unmovable. And so when you introduce this idea of heliocentrism, that we're actually spinning around in circles and around the sun, and spinning around the solar system, that's spinning around the galaxy, that the galaxy is spinning through the universe. It makes you such an insignificant piece of the world, of the creation, of the existence, that you just get lost in it all. I remember thinking when I was a kid how we've only got just this small epidermis of an atmosphere around us, holding us stuck to this ball, spinning at astronomical speeds. And I was like frightening. I was like, well, I guess it's okay. Nothing's going to happen. But once they said that the earth is moving, then now Scripture comes into question. And it says, okay, well, Scripture is not correct on science. So let's take a whole new view of what the world looks like that we live in. And so that brought in this enlightenment air quotes. So now everybody got dumber. The reality that they had known for the entire existence of humanity had now been changed into something completely different. And now they're looking at the authority of the church. That comes into question, the place of man in the universe, who God is in relationship to us, who we are in relationship to him. Everything got put on the table. And so this fake enlightenment gets put forward, and all the isms start being created, and this liberal view of humanity just blossoms. And then that it ends in this ridiculous notion that something came from nothing, that evolution is true. And you still hear that today, even though scientifically it's been proven to be impossible. You still hear people, Catholics of good faith, good conscience, using evolution as part of their just vernacular. And then so we don't look at these things critically. We don't realize. I was talking to my mom once about this. She's like, "Wait, you really don't think that we're moving?" And I said, "No." And she says, "Well, how do you think we, you know?" And I said something about gravity, and I said, "No, gravity." And she was a math and science teacher, and I said, "No, gravity is a theory. It's never been proven." She goes, "No, it's a law." And so we had to look it up. Like, we don't even know these things about the world that we live in because we've been presented this fake reality that's so detailed that it blows the mind how they have gotten away with this, that we would accept some of the most preposterous things presented to us as evidence. And it's just not possible. It's not possible that we're living on this spinning ball held together by a mysterious force that no one can neither test nor explain. So, and that was the whole thing that Robert Sungenis did. He did a whole series, or he did an entire documentary on. It's called The Principle, so worth looking at. And of course, he and I disagree.
Keep going, Aaron.
Yeah, go ahead. But he brings up this. He and I disagree on the fundamental shape of everything, but I think these things are important because when you don't even know where you are physically in relationship to God, so many things get lost, you know, and that's where I think they're able to slip all of these other things in. I think a lot of these viruses come from us just not being able to believe what we see with our own eyes. So that was the kick in for the tagline on the title.
Oh, okay. I wanted to read something, but I'm not sure.
Reading's dangerous.
I know. I'm not sure I can find it. Unfortunately, can I find it maybe in here? I don't think I'm going to be able to find it right now. But now I don't recommend this book to anybody, but it influenced me deeply. So I don't recommend this book, but Meditations on the Tarot. I think he's one of the most amazing thinkers. It's an anonymous book. The foreword was by Hans von Balthasar. So
Wow.
It sounds very modern already. And he was one of the greatest Kabbalists of the 20th century. And he was actually second in line under Steiner, but he became a Catholic and a hardcore Catholic. So he was like one of the most metaphysically minded people. I'll just even read a line from him about egregores. I talk about egregores. Now, I talked about egregores in my first book, and I just didn't discover this source and this was part of what pulled me into Catholicism. But he says, now I'll get back to the earth, but just let me read this line because I could find this one.
Yeah.
Antichrist is the ideal of biological and historical evolution without grace. So you were talking about the beginning. First of all, we wonder about the shape, and then we wonder about the age of the earth, and we're kind of sucked into Darwinism. So we're looking at historical evolution without grace, and in a sense, but rather these are egregores or phantoms generated through the biological and historical evolution opened up by the serpent who is the author and master of biological and historical evolution science studies and teaches. So one thing that grabbed me, what he said, when we try to apprehend reality now, he influenced me, but it's kind of my tagline that reality is historical, hierarchical, and sacramental. Thomberg would especially mention the hierarchy. All revolutions are based on the supposition. They always attack hierarchy. They always throw in equality of some kind. And it's kind of always the egregore that's behind a lot of revolutions. But okay, the shape of the earth, because we were kind of joking when we put the flat earth in the title. The scripture is pretty clear that we're not moving. And the math has always been consistent from the ancient world until to now, that you can do the math and be stationary, and you can also do the math. And I'm not talking about the shape of the earth. I'm just talking about the stationary part. So Thomberg would say like this: when I say reality is sacramental, what we do when we participate in the holy sacrifice of the Mass is we're engaging at a point in time where heaven and earth meet. So that's what we're doing, and that's the fullness of reality, because reality is both the transcendent frame and the immanent, the heavenly frame. That's why if everybody sees the world in a naturalistic or secular way, they're always missing a part of the fullness of reality, and the fullness of reality is introduced by Christ's incarnation. Okay, I'm getting kind of crazy. So what Thomberg says is when you crunch down the heavenly and just see it in earthly, you're going to see it one way. When you open it up to the transcendent, suddenly you're going to see, why can you not feel that you're moving until you investigate it and sort of kind of think about it that way? Then you say, yeah, we're not moving. Some people can maybe go too far, because he's saying, here's the trick. You have to balance the transcendent and the immanent frame. And I think people can get too far or the other. And that's the basis of Gnosticism. One kind of Gnosticism wants to reject the physical and just go into the transcendent. And the reverse Gnosticism just wants to go into the natural. So I think part of something we have to do when we look at these things, and Thomberg would advise us, and that's why we have to stay to the church. And Thomberg's the one that says he's got a unique, outside of all the, this idea of an egregore is once you're in the Catholic Church, it's vertical. Egregore is all the energy that wants to pull you horizontal. And that's where the literal demons of the mind will get on you so that you can't apprehend reality in its fullness. So I just think we have to be balanced. And I mean, so I happen to believe that. I don't think it has much to do with your faith, or even, some people can argue. I think you can have either view and, just embrace the Christ is King in your heart and your soul and spread it and make it a central part of the communities that you need to be creating. But a lot of people were pulled, from agnosticism into this line of thinking by this kind of discovery. I could call it a psyop, starting in 2015, the flat earth kind of stuff. And I always followed it. I was intrigued because I saw the psyop portion of it, but I also thought that there's kind of a there. And some of the simple aspects are, how do you get water to bend and so forth? But I don't want to get into that too much, because what I have seen is people that embrace it a lot, like it's the be all and end all. You kind of miss a lot of other parts when you get subsumed into that kind of stuff. And I just don't know. I know that all of the pictures of the Earth are CGI. I'd like to see an actual picture. So I'm kind of I trust that the math that we're spinning a couple hundred miles an hour this way, a couple thousand miles, I can trust the math. I'm sure you can make the math work out. What's his name? Robert St. Genis, I guess. He wrote a pretty vigorous piece defending the geocentric, but then I guess he wrote tons defending the globe Earth. So I don't want to weigh in. I'm super agnostic on the shape. I have no idea. I just don't know. I would love to see a true photograph of what things look like. But yeah, in my heart of hearts, I think it's a balanced view to think that we're not spinning at hundreds and thousands of miles an hour. But some people can't go there. I don't want to alienate anybody with something like the shape of the Earth, because I don't think it matters. But what I'm more interested in is this war on reality. And Thunberg here reminds us, when we go in to Catholicism, the traditional Catholic social order with its traditionally understood ecclesiology, theology, and eschatology, it's the safest place that we can be to be immune from the mind demons that are trying to get us all around, usually in the form of these dialectics. Marxism is the perfect dialectic. Why? Because Marxism rejects the transcendent frame. They're just kind of pictures, bad faith that we had from embracing the Christian tradition. So as an economic base and a superstructure. Well, the masters of capital are going to control the base. They're going to control the theater of the mind. So once they remove the transcendent frame and all the bad faiths of the saints and all of that, and they remove that, and Protestants help pave the way for that, then they're going to paint the pictures in your mind. And part of the pictures of your mind are, it's all about the money. We're the masters of the money. So you're going to give us a soft form of worship now until the Messianic age. And we're not going to have to use our proxies anymore. We're going to come out in the Noahide law age, and you're going to literally, you're going to have to worship us, and that's what the Noahide laws are. And so I don't know if Trump is going to, in the short order, literally come up. I mean, he's behind them. And so they pretty much, with this thing that here's your donor money, he's accepted it, and they're saying right there that this is what we expect you to come out and say. So at that point, when he comes out and said it, because for Thunberg, when you consent to something, you've opened up the portal of your mind to these things. So you can kind of, because it's not just that day you go and hit the Chad or whatever they're called in the voting booth. It's all of what you're going to expose your mind in that time. Yes, they're terrible. I'm good. You look at all those videos that frame everything in a dialectic. Everything's this dramatic fashion, this or that. Catholicism is very much a both and proposition. And we always the world wants to get you into the dialectic, both and. And that's about the shape of the world, of the earth. Somehow, I believe that these things are a both and so I stay agnostic about both of them, and I think they're part of a mystery of creation. So that's where I go with all that stuff.
Yeah, and I think a big important part about all of these is that when you balance out the part that we don't know about, which is how far are they along on their logistical planning, that's something that they have a bit of control over. But the other part is the thing that they've tried to manage control over, which is what we see as reality. So I think as more and more people are starting to wake up to the different, at least, questions that are valid and should be asked out there, I think one of the failings within the church right now, and I think a big part of why they're trying to get rid of the TLM, I want to go back to that particular point, is that as people wake up, they see this stuff and they're like, well, where do I go with this? So what you'll find in all these different rabbit holes, whether it's, a question, they're questioning about a particular date or, that happened in 2001, or a virus that happened a few years ago. Any one of these different events that are occurring in people's lives where they're waking up and they're starting to see things, and their reality is shaken, they're looking around for some other replacement reality, and they go in the exact opposite direction. They go into some sort of, like you see this rise in this pagan Nordic god worship that's coming with people, or white nationalism, or these different, there's all these answers that people are trying to create that are just as bad and in evil as you would find in the egregores, you call it. So one of the things that I think we have to continue to keep coming back to as Catholics is trying to understand how this reality, this understanding, how when we're going back to tradition, we're understanding these lies that have been told to us, and saying, okay, now I can see my faith more clearly, and I can see what it is that I'm supposed to be doing and how I'm supposed to live it out, and understanding how this ties in to the spiritual battle that's going on around us all the time. It should lead us to a more devout life, a more penitential life, one that says, I can't do anything about this. other than influence my friends locally. I can build my networks locally, and I can pray like there is no tomorrow. I can skip a meal. I can give up a glass of water. I can do something with my physical act of praying, and my physical act of reparations that's going to add to that spiritual battle on the good side. So I think it is important to look at these things, you know, those three big lies that I brought up, and say, okay, I see how they've taken us away from it. Now, if I remove those lies, scripture becomes more clear. My faith becomes more clear. All the lies they told me about Galileo and the Inquisitions and all these things, you start to see the true history and how we are related, and integrated with the church. And I think the important takeaway should be, as we're looking at these things, how does this connect me closer to my faith? How does this push me deeper into it? And be able to explain to people that, no, this thing that you're creating over here, this new reality, this new sort of pagan religion, or this universal religion that people are, I mean, these people, and especially in the flat earth world, I mean, they're non-Trinitarian. They've gone into this whole
Hebrew
very
roots.
pagan view of the world. And I try to remind people, it's like, look, that's not the answer. It does bring people back to a biblical view of God, but the Aztecs were flat earthers, the Romans were flat earthers. All these brutal societies prior to the millennial age have had this correct worldview, and it didn't bring them to knowledge of God and his true nature.
Yeah, that's good, Aaron. I agree. We have to, and I think it's easy. Just think about what was under attack, especially like the turn of the 20th century with that form of modernism. I said modernism really begins 500 years ago with Machiavelli, that just takes the transcendent lens out of it. But think what was under attack: the miracles of Christ, some of the literal readings of Genesis. And, Catholic answer kind of dudes can sound kind of sophisticated and kind of try to meld these kind of things together. But just let miracles be miracles. This God want to speak to us in 7 days. Just do it. It's a both and. There is probably just like the bread of life discourse. It is spiritual, but it's also literal. Now, that's not everything. You need to have a good hermeneutics, because the millennial reign does belong in purely the spiritual. But, Jonah got eaten. He's inside the belly of a whale for 3 days. If you believe that Jesus can, this is what the modernists were attacking. There was no miracles. There was no turning the bread into wine. All of this stuff is necessary to understand how the church was going to replace the covenant in the body of Christ. So you're missing so much when you don't see the literal component, that this is my literal blood, and this is what's going to unite the whole church, is when we participate that. And how do we do it? We do it worthily each week. And but yeah, to get back to it, we have to kind of pull everything together for tonight. We have to really think, what is under attack? And those are the things that should be cherished. It's really everything that's true and good and beautiful in a broad sense. And, it's hard for people from the outside, and it's hard for cradle Catholics to kind of look at the craziness that's going on and all the corruption over the last several decades, and kind of think like, how would, I look from the outside, how would anybody want to sign on to this level of corruption, until you see that once you embrace the bread of life discourse, that's the summit, and the whole, everything's designed around that. The ecclesiology, the theology, and the eschatology. It pulls the past into the present. This one thing from Genesis to Revelation. It brings everything together. So what's under attack? The traditional Latin Mass. Everything is, I said, Western civilization, American, but right now that's the topic this week. And part of what I'm going to suggest, if you can't name names, and it's hard because people that name names get shoved down a memory hole. But we're asked to. This is a matter of duty. You're asked to look into the fullness of reality, and not just follow a Christ that's an easy Jesus that I can profit from, that I can hold on to and be in good standing, but that you'll truly defend, the people that were attacking Christ face to face. It's the same typological of spirit that's attacking the church right now. If you want to come back with that kind of thing, that's monocausal. That's what the sophisticants are going to say. That's monocausal. And they're going to say, like, no, I'm virtuous, I don't go there. Well, the saints went there, and they were willing to die for these truths, beginning with Saint Stephen. That's precisely what he said. So as the church dies, do you just want to go, oh, it's the kenosis of the church, and this is how it goes, and it's a modern age, and it's a new. Do you want to just die with the rest of the modernists, or do you want to stand up for what was truly embedded in the very heart of Christendom, which was the epitome of what is true and good and beautiful, all things being raised up to Christ, the source of all authority and power, and then it coming back down to us. And so we live it in our hearts so that when we go through the time of tribulation, we can pass these seeds down. So when there is a resurrection, it's not going to be a sort of a Protestant idea, but typologically there would be a resurrection. Many Catholic mystics that have been accepted within the body of the church have said that there is going to be a resurrection of the church. So we have to hold on to these truths of Christendom. And so even though in its fullness, that's where the Christ as King belongs, we still hold Christ as King in our heart. And we're still obedient to the church. And this is where things get kind of tricky, but we can end it. But yeah, so right now, to kind of finish it, I don't know what to say. But Vigano see this conspiracy, which more and more people are seeing now. I wrote, it's a couple of years ago that I wrote that. Well, why can he see something other people can't see? And ultimately, I think there's some problematic aspects with him, and I don't even. I'm kind of almost a little bit agnostic about him, but at the end of the day, I think God raises up certain voices so that we're aware of these things. I wouldn't go as far as to say he's inside, but I don't know, really appealing to Trump as like it can take on the deep state. At the same time, he's revealing the deepest truths. I always found that strange. So I don't really know what to do with Vigano right now. I truly wish him the best over there as he's going through this. And I wish that he could really throw some more cards on the table, but we'll see. It looks, I don't know if Aaron's going to pop up here. I think maybe it was a technical thing or something went on at his end. So in short order, if you want to become a member, it's free. And I have the video over there that I created today. Part 2 is available to, of course, supporters only. And all the videos we did over the last few weeks, ever since the 10th of June. So much as that wasn't that long ago, but it does seem like a long time ago. It's really exciting what's going on for me over there at Locals. Will got going up over there at Telegraph. And I guess people are over there communicating. There's a group over there today, mostly communicating about Vigano. So it's cool. I love it. People have been telling their stories. I'd like to get some of you on, at least over there in Locals, and we'd be able to have time to share your stories. We had Missy on last week. That was a lot of fun. I have a couple other people that want to tell their stories lined up. So I'm looking forward to what we have going on over there at Locals. Again, I'll have this Oxford educated, he's an international relations specialist. He's got a couple books that are making the rounds on the circuits. So he's had some peer reviewed stuff. Frankly, there's nothing that I haven't mentioned on the channel here or in my books, but I'm going to have him on because he's getting some play with some pretty big actors. So I'm going to have him on Wednesday, Dr. Hughes. And I'm going to try not to give him any pushback because when he kind of sees who are those people, I don't think he's going to want to talk about the one conspiracy that we're talking about today that we can trace back to 1489 and the document or the decree that comes out of Constantinople. So I'll try not to give him too much feedback, but he's got, in terms of what's been happening, the science, he's got a lot of interesting things to say. So that stuff's really touchy over here. So I'll probably take that over to Locals. And I want to really make some of the connections he's done. He's probably working from the work of Anthony Anthony Sutton on the kind of the German connection, the Nazi connection then and now, and seeing a lot of interesting parallels between how things have played out in the last few years, both in Weimar Germany during World War II and right now. So I think he's got a lot of interesting connections there. So I hope he's a great guest, and I'll have that on Wednesday. And I'll probably just pull together a lot of other things that we've been talking about locals and present some pieces over here on the show. One thing that I wanted to go into a little bit is just some of the parts that we touched on today about how millennialism was perverted and introduced into English Anglo-American Empire project. And so it's all around us. It's in the air we breathe, and it precedes the whole Schofield-Darby thing by centuries. It's really deeply embedded, and it's part of taking the total reality of the Catholic Church, taking it out of context. Of course, you can pervert anything with sola scriptura and sola fide, and they're going to kind of really embed this idea, take a concrete reality and remove it to, as Aaron said, a God of being, pure being, where there's no egregore, put it into a dialectic, into a becoming. And that's what's going on with the Millennial Project. And we so much part of the American experience, the city on the hill, if you see it and be it, name it and claim it and visualize it. And we're kind of always part of this becoming enterprise and making ourselves this kind of project. And we don't realize it's kind of like, President Trump's, I guess, Norman Vincent Peale, I guess he went to his sermons in high school, and was one of his marriages was by Norman Vincent. He really introduced this with the power of positive thinking in 1956. And you can kind of, and there's places for kind of visualizing, there's no doubt about it, but it can take you away and really kind of bring you into a dialectic within the city of man, when more than ever we need to stand together inside the city of God, and really not get swept away with a lot of the spectacle and amusements and just the craziness that's going on, because so much of what we see is being engineered. All right, Mr. Aaron, if you have any thoughts, please put them out there, because I think we're going to wrap up the show. Hi, Bob. Hi, Diego. Nice to see y'all. Hi, Miriam
Okay.
Martin. Doing nice to see y'all.
Not hi, Bob Smith, though. he's trolling. I had one thought on I meant to bring it up earlier when I was talking.
He's a troller. Okay.
Yeah. Was on the TLM, and something I've been thinking about is there's I think a lot of when you consider there's probably maybe 1 million people out there that are attending the traditional Latin Mass. So it's not like, I just don't think that's for the Vatican. It's not so much about there's part of it that's about the prayer of the Mass, because the prayer of the TLM is so effective. But every single cardinal, bishop, the Pope at the time that brought about the new Mass, had all grown up under the traditional Latin Mass. They all understood everything. I mean, the Ottaviani intervention that was written by Cardinal Ottaviani brought up all of these errors that were going on with the Novus Ordo that was a problem. So they all knew about it, and they know about it now. But I think one of the big problems with the Novus Ordo for those people is that the Novus Ordo, and someone even mentioned it in the chat, is the TLM teaches you the faith, even if you don't have a missal and you can follow along, it shows you that the Eucharist is Christ. And one of the benefits, the greatest advantage to the TLM that I've seen in people is that it provides that discipline and that structure that we've talked about that you need in prayer life. You live that, you see that every Sunday. So it encourages you throughout the week to enter into that disciplined prayer life. So I think a great part of what is, if you were to look at the demonic side, I can imagine that it's
Bob's been banned.
Huh?
Bob's been banned. Keep going, Aaron.
Oh, Bob, good. Very good. But it's this notion that it's all about the Mass, but in reality, it's all about the people who are at the Mass, who are adopting this disciplined prayer life, and these soldiers are coming up. These spiritual battle hardened veterans are being developed, and the hope is that if you get rid of this TLM, then this disciplined life that people are creating around this mass is going to fade away. So I think an important thing for people to think about isn't not, it's a big part of what we're going to do whenever they get rid of it. That's going to reveal itself at the time. But what we have to be able to understand or visualize as we're going through it, since you just used that, is how are we going to keep this fervor, this faith going if you're in a situation where if you do decide to go to a Novus Ordo, because that's the only one that's available and you don't want to violate the third commandment, how are you going to keep that fervor when you're playing glad hands with your neighbor and you're just sitting there just getting beat down by the jackassery that's going on around you? So that's the thing that I'm working through in my mind, is if I don't have access to a daily mass, because that's been the pivotal change in my life, to be able to have the daily TLM, that 40 minutes of just that silence of prayer has been monumental in my life. So we need to be thinking through that problem set is without that encouragement, without that food, that spiritual food to keep us strong throughout the week, how are we going to continue on?
Yeah. And, when I watch when I watch people, nobody's really got many good proposals. So, but it's definitely out there as a major question. One of the small things is we can network and have communities. So if God's raising up somebody that has the right answer at the right time, that we can be drawn to that person. But I don't see any, it's just more of a question than there are good answers out there. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
And that's why you've looked into it, right? It's a tricky one.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's one of the big problems that people are right now. And one of the things we're discussing in the group, it's like, if the Novus Ordo is the only thing available to you and there's just so many abominations going on at the mass, can you actually go and attend stuff like that, and be a part of it? And some of the guys say, no, absolutely not. I'll stay home and pray the rosary. They don't think God requires them to be partake in apostasy. So like I said before, I leave complete room in my mind with charity towards others and how they're going to deal with it, because I don't know how I'm going to deal with it until it actually happens.
Yeah. And I'm sure there will be some underground ones available, I'm sure, and people will have to make a decision about what they're going to do. But it's been fun, Aaron. A good exchange. Nice being able to rap with you for a while. And my prayers go out to you and to all the people in the chat. And it's been fun. So, oh yeah, I mean, thank you guys. It's and I'm getting a little more used to being able to kind of look over here. Sue, nice to see you again. And Dr. David. So I'm going to say this wrong. I don't want to say it wrong, David. But building private chapels may be our only strategy. I think that seems very sound, David. I think that sounds very, very, very sound.
Because one of the principal arguments out there is that the Pope doesn't have the authority to abrogate the Latin Mass, or to say that a priest cannot say the Latin Mass, even if his bishop tells him he can't. He has the right to say it.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. Yep. Thanks, Raymond. Okay, everybody. It's going to be a wrap here. God bless you all. And we'll be back. I hope we didn't get too carried away. I'm going to get another strike. So we'll be back.
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay. See y'all. God bless.